So welcome to lesson 9. This is about polynomials and mainly multiplication, distributing, the FOIL method and all that. I'm sure a lot of it's going to come back. But one thing that I noticed people stumble over is they never really understood the terminology. So I know y'all don't like to learn the words, but let's go over the words. First, I want to look at the difference between a monomial and a polynomial. Mono means one, nomial means term. So this is one term. Poly means many, so this is many terms. Now, what is a term? You know, both of them have term in it. What's a term? A term is when you multiply a number, a constant, times variables. You can have as many variables as you want to. As long as they're all multiplied together, that is a monomial. You can just have an x. That's a monomial. It's 1 times a variable. You can have 3xy. You can have negative 7x to the third over 4. All of these are monomials, okay? So a polynomial is many terms. It can be 2 or more. So I could have x plus y. I've got 2 terms added together. It can be 3x minus 7. It can be 2xy to the third z over 4, okay, plus 1. That makes it a polynomial. So we can have even more. What if I have 3x plus 2y plus z? That makes it a polynomial. So what do you notice that polynomials have that monomials do not have? Plus and minus signs. Now, other than this is a negative, which is not the same thing. Polynomials are always going to have a plus or a minus sign. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. If there's not one, you know you have a monomial. If there is one, you have a polynomial. Now let's talk about polynomials for just a second, because there are layers to the polynomial. There's special names for certain polynomials. And I know these are going to come back. So, for example, first, there's a binomial. What does bi mean? 2. Like a bicycle, 2 wheels. Well, a binomial has 2 terms. So some examples would be x plus y, 3x minus 5, 2xy plus z. These are all binomials. How many plus and minus signs do each one of these have? They have 1. That's what separates your terms. Okay? There is something else called a trinomial. Well, what do you think? It's going to have 3 terms. So how many plus and minus signs do you expect it to have? 2. There's going to be 1 in between. So you could have x plus y plus z. This is a trinomial. 2x squared minus 3x plus 4. That's a trinomial. Okay. Now, what if you have more than 3? Well, we just call all of those. Everything else is just a polynomial. Okay, just many terms. So you can call these polynomials. These can be referred to as polynomials. We just have special terms for the bi and the tri because we use them so much. All right. So we know the difference now between a monomial and a polynomial, and we know the difference in the different types of polynomials. I want you to know this because when we go through this lesson, I'm going to be using those words, and I want those to have a concrete meaning for you. Okay, let's move on. So our main topic for this section on polynomials is multiplication of polynomials. When you're doing order of operations, your first step is to get rid of your grouping symbols or your parentheses, you know that. Well, there's 2 ways to get rid of parentheses. The best way is to do what's inside of there first, to simplify that down to 1 term. Once you have 1 term in the parentheses, then you can get rid of the parentheses. But if you look at this example, I can't do what's in there. I can't add x plus 4. So we had an option. We have an alternative. You can distribute whatever is multiplied by the parentheses. Okay? What's multiplied by this parenthesis? Well, the 3 is. Now, the thing is, you have to be sure that you multiply whatever is outside that set of parentheses times everything in there. I always say it's like having a bag of candy with a classroom full of kids. Everybody in that room wants an opportunity to get the same amount. So if I distribute here, this is going to be 3 times x, which is 3x, and 3 times 4, which is 12. Now what sign goes in there? Well, what did you multiply? Positive 3 times positive 4? So that gave you a plus. All right. Number 2, you have a monomial times a trinomial. You're just going to make sure that that monomial gets multiplied times everything in there. So you've got 6x plus 3y plus 21. Okay. Now for number 3, this was a little bit different because the monomial is behind the set of parentheses, but that's okay. We've talked about before, multiplication is commutative. So 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2. That means this is technically the same thing as this. If you want to rewrite it with that monomial in front, you're free to, but you know, that's really just a waste of time. Just distribute backwards. 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 8 is 40. All right, now here I have a monomial that has a variable in it, so you just have to be careful. You already have that skill now, so just use it when you add this new skill. 2x times x is what? 2x to the second. Remember, these actually have an exponent of 1, and when you multiply 2 bases with 2 exponents, you add the exponents. All right, 2x times y is 2xy, and 2x times z is 2xz. Okay, let's look at some more examples. Okay, let's look at number 5. Now we've got to pay attention. This says 2 plus x times x plus y. It's not 2 times x plus y, but it's x times x plus y. So your order of operations, you know, you do multiplication first. Well, what's multiplied? X times that set of parentheses. So what we're going to do, we're not going to fool with the 2 right now. We're just going to take care of distributing this into the set of parentheses. So I've got 2 plus. All right, x times x is x squared, and x times y is xy. Now you look at these, can they be combined? No. There's nothing that matches, but what you can do is put them in standard form. And that means you're going to take the highest exponent and put that first. So technically, to be in the correct form, we would want to start with x to the second and work our way down to just x to the first, and then put the constant or the 2 on the end. And that's not really a deal breaker, but it is something that I want you to be aware of. All right, let's look at number 6. This was written weirdly because I was trying to get a point across, but it, you know, best laid plans don't always work out. Anyway, what you've got here is x plus y times 7 plus x. So what I wanted you to understand was the multiplication has to come first. Since this is behind, we're going to multiply it this direction, all right? So what we're going to have here is 7x plus 7y, and then we're going to add that x onto the end. Now we can combine these two and get 8x plus 7y. So, like I said, normally in upper level math, you don't use the x for multiplication anymore because it gets confused with a variable. You would have just, this should have been written like that. That would have been more clear. Okay, so now let's look at this number 7. What we have here is a little bit next level because I have a binomial times a binomial. And I want to be sure that every number in here gets multiplied by every number in here. So if you want to, and sometimes I do this if I have a lot, take the first number in the first binomial, 3x, and you're going to multiply it times 7x plus 1. Whatever this sign is, plus, and whatever this number is, 2, and you're going to also multiply it by 7x plus 1. Now what a lot of people will do is they just draw the arrows like this and multiply. That's fine. This just makes it more clear sometimes. So how would we, what would we do now? 3x times 7x is 21x squared. And then 3x times 1 is 3x. Right here, 2 times 7x is 14x, and 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? Now you got to look and see if there's anything that you can combine. These two have matching variable parts, so I can add them. You add the coefficients. 21x squared is not going to change. 3x plus 14x is 17x plus 2. Okay, let's look at some more. Okay, for number 8, what we have is a binomial times a trinomial. Now, the level of difficulty is not any higher, it's just extended. We just have more to do. This is where I tend to write down every single step because I don't want to lose something doing it in my head, all right? So what you have here, what you need to make sure you do is you want to multiply this times all of those and this one times all of those. So a safe bet is to just go ahead and write the 2x times this whole set of parentheses plus 5 times the whole set of parentheses again. Now, is that necessary? No, a lot of people will do it in their head, and that's fine. But if you're prepping for an important test, it's okay to go the extra mile and just make sure you don't mess up. So that's what I do. All right. Now it's a little bit easier for me to see. I'm just going to multiply. I'm going to distribute this into here. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 3y is 6xy. 2x times 10 is plus 20x. Okay? Now let's do this one. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times 3y is 15y. And 5 times 10 is 50. Now let's see if there's anything we can combine. What I do is I just start with my highest exponent and work my way down, and I cross things off as I bring them down. That way I don't lose something. So 2x squared is my highest exponent. I bring it down and I can cross it off. All right, I see 6xy. Is there anything that matches that? No. So that's going to stay just like it is, and I can cross it off. Now, 20x plus 5x do match. So I can combine those. 20x plus 5x is 25x. Remember, when you add variables, you don't change your exponents. And then I'm going to have 15y and 50. Nothing else will combine. So, yes, it's long, but it wasn't that hard. It was just doing the same thing over and over and over. Let's look at the next one. Okay, look at number 9. And one thing I do want to make you look closely at, what is in between my two sets of parentheses? Nothing. So these are multiplied. If you had a plus or a minus in between here, and we will look at some of those later on, that makes this a whole different scenario, okay? But for right now, we need to multiply this trinomial times this trinomial. So what I'm going to do is the OCD way. I'm going to rewrite each of these three numbers times the whole set of parentheses. Because if this is an important problem that I really want to get correct, it's okay to write down that extra step. All right, so plus y times 4x plus 2y plus 5 plus 8 times 4x plus 2y plus 5. okay? Now we're just going to do the distributive property 3 times. So 3x times 4x is 12x to the second. 3x times 2y is 6xy. And 3x times 5 is 15x. All right, then I come down here. Y times 4x is 4xy. Now remember, it's best to put them in alphabetical order if possible. Y times 2y is plus 2y squared. And y times 5 is 5y. All right, we get down here. And 8 times 4 is 32x. And 8 times 2y is 16y. And 8 times 5 is 40. That's a big old long thing in numbers. So let's be careful when we start combining terms. Make sure we don't lose anything. All right, you start with your highest exponent first letter. So that's going to be x squared. There are no more x squared. So 12x squared is my first term. I can cross it out and I'm done with it. Now I want to find things that just have an x. Well, I see a 15x and I see a 32x. So I can combine those two and they're going to be positive. 15 plus 32 is 47x. So I got rid of those two. All right. Now for xy's, here is a 6xy and here's a 4xy. I can combine those to be 10xy. Got rid of those two. All right, next I'm going to go with I'm ready to go for my y's. I'm out of x's, so now I'm going to pick up the y's. Go to your highest exponent, and I have a 2y squared here. So I'll put that down. There's nothing to combine it to. All right, I do have a 5y and a 16y that can be combined. So that's going to be plus 21y. And then all I have left is the 40. And this big old long thing is, yes, your answer. So, like I said, it's more an endurance test than it is anything else. Because none of it, taking those numbers 2 at the time, none of it was hard. But you just had to concentrate and focus. That's why I'm saying it's better to write everything down and go ahead and get it right than to just kind of go halfway through it and get it wrong and you got to start over. Okay, on the back side of lesson 9, we get into a special case. And this is binomial times binomial. And they look like this. You've got one binomial multiplied times another binomial. Now, we already worked some of these. We just used the distributive property. But there is a little acronym, FOL. I'm sure you remember this now. It's coming back. All that is a steps, the way to do your steps to make sure that you multiply everything together. And really the only reason we teach the FOIL method anymore is because when we get to factoring, it's easier to unfold. You kind of have a reference. So that's what it is. You actually already know one way to work these problems. And that would be multiplying, this number times both of these and this number. So what is full? Well, the first two numbers of each thing, what is that? A times C. So your F here would be AC. Now what's the outside? Well, that's the two numbers on the outside of the whole problem, the beginning and the end. So A times D would be AD. All right, so if these two are the outside, what do you think are the inside? These two right here. Okay, B times C. So your I is BC. And then the last two, naturally, would be B times D. That's plus. Okay? I mean your L. So this is FOIL. And like I'm saying, it's not necessary in the multiplying. Nobody's going to know after you get your answer if you used FOIL or if you just distributed. It's the same thing. But I want you to be aware of it because you will hear it referred to all the time. So let's look at this. Now remember, you can only use full for binomial times binomial. I hear that a lot of times. They'll have a binomial times a trinomial, and somebody will say, can I full this? No, full is only for binomial times binomial. So when I full this, what am I going to have? My f is going to be 3x squared, okay? My o is the outside, so that is 7x. My I is the inside, so that would be 6x. And my L is 2 times 7, 14. Now usually your O and your I terms can be combined. Sometimes not, but usually. So what would you get for your final answer here? That'd be 3x squared. All right, 7 plus 6 is 13x plus 14. Notice how binomial times binomial gets you a trinomial, okay? All right, let's look at this one. Now in this one, you've got to watch your signs because that affects your answer. So full f, 2x times x is 2x squared. All right, my outside. 2x times negative 1 or minus 1 gets me minus 2x. That's what I mean about watching your sign. All right, FO, I is the inside. 3 times x is positive 3x. And then your last 3 times negative 1 or minus 1 is minus 3. Now when you combine those two middle terms, that doesn't change. Minus 2x plus 3x gives you plus 1x, and you don't have to put the 1 and then the minus 3. Okay, notice 2 binomials multiplied together gave you a trinomial. Okay. Okay, I just noticed that I skipped example 2, so let me back up and get it. All right, full method. We're going to multiply the first two numbers together. 3x times 2x is 6x to the second. Then your outside, 3x times 1 is plus 3x. Your inside, minus 7 times positive 2 is going to be minus 14x. And then your last two, minus 7 times 1, be minus 7. Now you got to combine your O and your I terms. So now you have 6x squared, and positive 3 minus 14 is going to be minus 11x minus 7. Once again, binomial times binomial got you a trinomial. Okay, you are ready to pause now and you go work the problems in your practice set, and then whatever you have trouble with, you can come back because I will work through every single one with an explanation, and you can skim through there, find which ones you need, okay? So come back here when you get through with yours. Okay, so how'd you do? One of the things I asked you, I put a blank out beside each one, and I asked you to put whether you could use the full method or not. Put an F if you could. So that would have been numbers 6 and 7, 10, 11, and all of 13 through 18. You could only use the full method if you had binomial times binomial. Mainly I want you to realize there are a lot of them that you can't use the full method on, and that's why. So, all right, let's look at these first 5. What you want to do is just distribute whatever is outside the parentheses times whatever is inside, and you just have to be careful. 5x times 6x is 30x to the second, and 5x times 8 is 40x. Nothing can be combined, so it's just straight distributing. All right, here, 8 times 3x is 24x, and 8 times 4, 32. Nothing can be combined. Now we have a monomial times a trinomial, so we're just going to multiply it times 3 things. All right, 4x times 8x squared is 32x to the third. 4x times 3x is 12x to the second. And 4x times 5 is 20x. None of these can be combined because all of the x's have different exponents. Okay, on number 4, we're going to distribute all the way in. A times 5 is 40. x squared. And 8 times 5x, and that's a minus, so it's going to be minus 40x. And then 8 times positive 3 is positive 32. Nope. 8 times 3 is what? 24. Sorry. Okay. 8 times 3 is 24. Now, this one was a little bit different because your monomial's at the back end. But that's all right. You just distribute backwards. You're just going to multiply it still times all three. So, 6x squared times 2x squared is 12x to the fourth. And 6x squared times 2x is 12x to the third. And 6x squared times 5 is 30x squared. Okay? Just got to stay focused. Okay, let's have a look at the next set. And this first one, binomial times binomial, so you can use full. All right, first, 3x times 8x is 24x squared. The outside is 3x times 4, so that's 12x. The inside, 4 times 8x is 32x. And then the last two, 4 times 4 is 16. And the two middle terms can be combined. So you've got 24x squared. All right, 12 plus 32 is 44x plus 16. Final answer. Okay, here's another full. Binomial times binomial. So we're going to do the first two. 6 times 7 is 42. X to the second. Your outside, 6x times minus 1 is minus 6x. Your inside, minus 1 times 7x is minus 7x. And then your last two, negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. These two middle numbers can be combined, or the two middle terms. So you're going to have 42x to the second. All right, minus 6 minus 7, what do you do when you have two numbers with the same signs? You add them and keep the sign. So that's going to be negative 13x plus 1. So you see how you're still using skills from those earlier lessons. You know, we're just compounding. All right, here we've got a binomial times a trinomial. So I just need to be careful. All right. First, I'm going to multiply 5x times all three of these things, all right? And I'm going to try to do this in my head, so we'll see if I mess up. 5x times 3x squared is 15x squared. Nope, 15x to the third. It didn't take me long to mess up, all right? 5x times 5x is 25x to the second, and 5x times 4 is plus 20x. All right, that takes care of 5x times all that. Now let's do 1. Well, when you multiply 1 times all of those, it's just going to be this. So let's just say that's going to be plus 3x squared plus 5x plus 4. Now I need to go back in here and combine anything that matches. All right, 15x to the third doesn't match anything, but I'm going to cross it out so I'll know I've used it. 25x squared plus 3x squared is positive 28x squared. All right, 20x plus 5x is plus 25x, and then you've got that 4. Okay? All right, now down here, once again, now we have a trinomial times a binomial. Look, it's backwards from what we had the first time. Now, there are some different signs and all, so it's not going to be the same answer. But what I like to do is I like to still go with my smaller one, distribute it into the larger one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that I multiply this times all three of these things and this one times all three. Okay? So, slow and steady wins the race. 5x times 3x squared gets me 15x to the third. And 5x times minus 3x gets me minus 15x to the second. And 5x times minus 4 gets me minus 20x, okay? Now let's do the 1. 1 times all of these things is just going to be all these things. So 1 times 3x squared and 1 times minus 3x and 1 times minus 4. Okay. Now let's combine any terms that we can. Nothing will combine with that. So I have 15x to the third. Minus 15x and plus 3x squared is going to be, you've got different signs, so you're going to subtract and take the sign of the larger number. So that's going to be minus 12x to the second. All right, minus 20x and minus 3x, same signs, so you're going to add and keep the sign, and then you've got that minus 4, okay? Now, here is binomial times binomial, so we can FOIL it. The first two, 3x times 5x, 15x squared. All right, the outside 2 will give you minus 3x. The inside 2 will give you plus 20x, and then the last ones give you minus 4. All right, let's combine the middle terms. So you're going to have 15x squared minus 3 plus 20. You subtract and take the sign of the larger. So that is plus 17x minus 4. Okay, so you're probably pretty good at getting the hang of it now, and what you're running into is maybe some careless mistakes or maybe some of those odd things, the weird things. So let's look at numbers 11 through 15. Binomial times binomial. We're going to multiply the first two together. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. The outside 2, 3x times minus 4 is minus 12x. The inside 2, positive 4 times 3x is positive 12x. And then your last 2, 4 times 4, is going to be negative 16. All right? Let's combine these two middle terms. And you notice you have a negative 12 and a positive 12, which makes 0. So your final answer on this one is 9x squared minus 16. Those two middle terms eliminated each other. Okay? That's going to become very important later on. All right, here, once again, they give us the trinomial first and then your monomial here. So we just need to multiply that times all these things. Now, negative 4 times 3 is going to be negative 12x to the second. And negative 4 times 5 is going to be negative 20x. And negative 4 times 2 would be negative 8. And nothing will combine. All right, another FOIL problem here. X times x is x squared. X times minus 1 is minus 1x, and you don't have to put the 1. 1 times x is plus x, and then plus 1 times minus 1 is negative 1. All right, let's combine the middle numbers. Minus x plus x is 0, so your final answer here is x squared minus 1. You know, and you'll run across things that look weird, but if you just go by your rules, when you know your rules and you're confident, you've practiced and you're confident, then you understand sometimes numbers just do weird things, you know? All right, this is a binomial to the second power. So what I wanted you to understand here is you don't just square each number. You have to expand it out like this. Now you have a case for FOIL. So I want you to just force that into your head. When you have a binomial squared, you have to expand it out and use FOIL. All right, 2x times 2x is 4x to the second. And 2x times y is plus 2xy. And y times 2x is also 2xy. Remember, put your letters in alphabetical order. The last two, y times y, is y squared. We can combine those two, so we're going to have 4x squared plus 4xy plus y squared. Okay? All right, here is binomial times binomial. We have another FOIL. So x times x is x squared. 1 times x is 1x. And 1 times x is 1x, and no, you do not have to put the 1s. And then 1 times 1 is 1. That 1 you do have to put. These two will combine, so your final answer would be x squared plus 2x plus 1. Okay? All right, one more set. Okay, let's look at our last set of 5 for this lesson. And first we have binomial times binomial, so we're just going to FOIL it or distribute it. X times x is x squared. We've got minus 1x, so we'll just put the x. Minus 1x, another x. And then negative 1, or minus 1 times minus 1 is plus 1. All right, these two combine. Minus x is minus 2x. So for your final answer, looks like that. X squared minus 2x plus 1. If you missed that one, it was probably due to a careless mistake, you know. All right, here's another binomial times binomial, so we can FOIL it. 3x times 4x is 12x to the second. And then your outside, 3x times minus 3 is minus 9x. Your inside, minus 6 times 4 is minus 24x. And then your last two, minus 6 times minus 3 is positive 18. All right, these two combine. So we're going to have 12x squared. Minus 9 minus 24 is minus 33x. And then that plus 18. Okay. And here's another FOIL problem. So the first two, 5x times x is 5x. Your outside, 5x times 5 is 25x, that's 5x squared, 25x. And then 1 times x is x. 1 times 5 is 5. Combine those middle terms. So you've got 5x squared plus 26x plus 5. Okay. Now, on these last two, we're going to have to really concentrate because we have trinomial times trinomial. And what I'm actually going to do, I am going to write this one out because I've worked a lot of problems and the brain is a little bit tired. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, 6x squared times this whole set of parentheses, 4x squared plus 2x minus 1. Then I'm going to move to the second number, 5x, and that's going to be 4x squared plus 2x minus 1. And then I'm going to move to the third number, plus 6 times 4x squared plus 2x minus 1. Now, if I was sitting down at a table with just a piece of paper, I probably would not bother with expanding all that out. I would have just drawn my lines because I can keep up with it better. But under the circumstances, I think it would be, you know, I know it will be better for me. Now, we're going to distribute these first numbers into the whole second set of parentheses. So, 6x squared times 4x squared is 24x to the fourth. And 6x squared times 2x is positive 12x to the third. And 6x squared times minus 1 is minus 6x squared. Okay, now let's move on. 5x times 4x squared is plus 20x to the third. 5x times 2x is plus 10x to the second. And 5x times minus 1 is minus 5x. All right, now here we're going to distribute. 6 times 4x squared is positive 24x to the second. And 6 times 2x is positive 12x. And 6 times minus 1 is minus 6. You know, it's really at these points when I miss having a class on the other side because I always have, you know, 30 people helping me remember things. So I'm on my own here. Okay, let's start with exponents and work our way down. Do you have anything that matches 24x to the fourth? No. So that's going to be your first number. All right, and we've used that. Now let's go with x to the thirds. What all do we need to combine? 12 and 20, and that's going to be all of that. So that'll be 32x to the third. Took care of that. Okay, now for the x squareds. I've got minus 6x squared plus 10. So that gives me 4x squared plus 24x squared. So that's plus 28x to the second. And I took care of those. Okay, now minus 5x and plus 12x, opposite signs, so you're going to subtract and take the sign of the larger number. 12 minus 5 is 7, and that's positive. So that's going to be positive 7x. And then that takes care of those. And then I have minus 6. Okay? So your final answer is 24x to the fourth plus 32x to the third plus 28x squared plus 7x minus 6. Okay, I decided to start over for number 20 so I'd have plenty of room. And this time I'm going to try to man up, and I'm not going to copy all of it. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to take the first thing and I'm going to multiply it times everything in that third set of parentheses. So 3x squared times 6x squared gives me 18x to the fourth. And 3x squared times 6x gives me 18x to the third. And 3x squared times 4 gives me plus 12x to the second. Okay? So that took care of all of the first term. All right, now for the 4. Once again, I'm going to multiply it times all three of those. 4x times 6x squared is going to be plus 24x to the third. And 4x times 6x is going to be plus 24x squared. And 4x times 4 will be plus 16x. Okay? Now for the last one. Now I'm going to multiply minus 2 times all three things again. So minus 2 times 6x squared will give me minus 12x to the second. Minus 2 times 6x will give me minus 12x. And minus 2 times 4 will give me minus 8. Now let's go through here and combine. Start with your highest exponent of your first letter. We only have x, so we're going to start with 18x to the fourth. Now there is nothing else to combine with it, so we're done. Now 18x to the third will combine with 24x to the third, and that's going to be, let's see, it's going to be positive. So 8 and 4 is 12, carry 42x to the third, so that gets rid of those. Now for my x squared terms, I have 12 and 24, so that makes 36. And then minus 12 brings me back down to 24. So I'm going to have plus 24x squared. And then I've got positive 16 and minus 12. So that would give me plus 4x. And then the minus 8 will stand alone. So that's it. You can always, if you're still having difficulty, you can always redo the problems. I tell kids you're not going to remember every single answer, so get a fresh sheet and try it again. Keep trying till you get very comfortable with this, all right? And I'll see you right back here for lesson 10.